I'm going to go ahead and call this regular Assembly Committee on Homelessness meeting to order. We'll go ahead and start with introductions, starting with Mr. Peterson.
Pete Peterson.
Felix Rivera.
Suzanne LaFrance.
Forrest Dunbar.
Red Dyson.
Jake on the phone.
Do we have anyone on the phone?
Jake Draney.
Okay, great. Thank you. Nancy, if you could introduce yourself for the record.
Nancy Burke from the Mayor's Office.
Thank you. All right, and just want to let everyone know that Assemblymember Austin Quinn Davidson couldn't be at this meeting today. She is excused. So before we get into the business part of our meeting, just wanted to bring everyone's attention to a second sheet of paper at the table for those of you who don't have it. It's titled Assembly Committee on Homelessness, January through June Draft Meeting Topics. So if anyone has thoughts on any of those meeting topics, or perhaps thoughts on what we should do, yep, that one, for the second half of the year, feel free to email me. That's probably going to be the best way for you to get your thoughts and to me. That is riveraf@muni.org. That's RIVERAF@muni.org. With that, we'll go ahead and move on in our agenda to administration updates.
Mr. Chair, I just had a notice from Natasha Pineda that she's on her way. Would you like to, and I'm still getting the computer set for my presentation. How would that?
Sure. So, shall we move on then to the point in time count? Or is there another agenda topic that we can proceed with?
Sorry. I'll grab someone to come do this for me, and then I can be freed up to.
Jasmine, do you need a computer to do the Anchored Home Plan update? Sure, yeah. And then once Nancy gets back.
Also on a slide from the presentation that we just had at the library. The Anchored Home Plan, as you recall, has quarterly updates built into the plan, and the first one being January 9th, and so we just held that at the library. Several of you, in fact, were in attendance at that time. And if it's okay, Mr. Chair, I'd like to maybe pull up these slides because they kind of go through all of this information in one shot, if you will.
Great. Absolutely, Ms. Burke.
Okay, so the first quarterly meeting was held at the library. It was from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. As you see on this document that I've handed out, there are a number of places to get information about the work that's happening, or a number of forums to attend to receive information. And while we know that's a lot of places where, for us as presenters or the people organizing, we don't want to have too many places where we're repeating information, but each of these entities has a particular special focus or interest, so we want to make sure we're tailoring information to those groups. As such, I pulled out pieces of the update for the Assembly because I think there's some interesting elements in terms of public participation that happened at that meeting. And so I'll review those there, but you can look at the full presentation on the Coalition's website, which is linked here. And we will continue to keep you updated in this committee. Just to remember, this is our roadmap. We want to make homelessness rare, brief, and one time. which means that we have to now, as we look at organizing the services that are just meeting people on the street, getting them to safety, we now need to start turning our minds towards what are the permanent solutions, what are the things people need. And we know that that means job training and employment assistance. It means coordinating childcare, and probably there's a whole list of other things on that would be on this that we're not capturing. But to have us all begin thinking about those, the next rung out, if you will, of the resources people need to become successful in the community. I wanted to bring this because I think this was a helpful, we agreed in those forums to live or to listen well and be respectful, to raise hands, not speak over each other, and the dialogue at the community forum on the 9th took another tone than I think we've seen in other meetings, much more of like a lived experience kind of explanation, and however, it remained very cordial, very friendly, and informative, so that was wonderful. The polling questions, the consultant we're working with on the plan implementation is Ag Quebec, and they have some polling machines that they use. And so when you walk into the meeting, you receive a little remote, and when they bring up questions, you can plug in your response to those questions. And this really helps with engagement, and I think it helps with ownership of the steps that we're working on. And so you can see here that the community has a lot of ownership, a lot of information about, we're representing a lot of roles in the community in the forum. And I have to call a lifeline for just a second and ask, how many people do we think were at that forum total?
I counted 75.
75. Oh, thank you. Great. Kenny Peterson for the win. I know that there were probably 60 and 65 people that were answering the polling on a regular basis, but I didn't have that last update. This is the experience with homelessness that people said that they felt, and this feels representative of the calls that we get into the mayor's office and calls I hear coming into our other nonprofits, that there's a lot of people who are seeing and experiencing homelessness in the community. And there are some people who have their own experience, whether that be themselves or a family member. I want to ask the question, do you think it's possible that circumstances could occur that would cause you or a loved one to become homeless? Many people answered yes. This, of course, was just a matter of weeks after we've had a major earthquake, so I think everyone's thinking about that. What if my house was damaged? What would I be doing right now? So this was a good question. This is a reminder of the pillars and the work that's being done. There is a large amount of work. There's a lot of material in the full presentation. I encourage you to grab that off of the Coalition's website. Each of the pillars provided a brief update in the meeting, and then we had question and answer time. So you see here my wrong estimate about who attended the January 9th meeting, but you can see that we're gaining on 1,300 community members who've been involved, who've provided input, given us information about this plan. It is our commitment, it remains our commitment to have this not be an assembly thing, a mayor's thing, a nonprofit thing, a funder's thing. It needs to be everybody's thing, and these numbers are robust, and we really want them to remain that way. So this is just a quick review of those pillars, and what we're doing now is starting to reflect some of the best practices in the work that we know. For instance, on the third bullet down, we know scattered site is a best practice. We also know that our system will take a lot of resources and strategies to get to the place where we can manage scattered site housing. In terms of people with high needs, there's many people across the community right now in scattered site housing. So we have places where we have strengths and places where we continue to need to have support. We've talked a lot in this committee about camping. Community engagement, as I said, is our commitment. Functional zero, just to remind the committee, one of the questions that was asked is, what will our performance outcomes be? We will want to definitely have outcomes that will come from specific funders Funders always want to see outcomes in their resources, but really, if we are not creating outcomes that roll up into the community's functional zero, we will not move the needle on ending homelessness or creating this functional zero in the community. So I just wanted to throw that in as a reminder. And the system, this is the coordinated entry system. This system is being reworked and considered by Jasmine and her team. There is a lot of effort that's gone in. We think we have a very solid base to build the next level of what we need out of the community work. These processes realistically take a number of years to implement and to reconfigure what's in the community. I will take a breath for just a second and see. Jasmine Khan and Dr. Montager are both here. They are the partners on implementing this community plan, and I will see if they have anything they want to add. So please jump in if you want to.
I think to add that the community has continued to remain very engaged. We definitely had requests from community councils to come and talk about the plan. We've had requests from different organizations, businesses, faith-based groups in the community. And so one of the things we continue to work on with Nancy is how to be most responsive to the public need for discussion on this topic, but also continue to integrate the forums that we already have. So this, of course, assembly committee meeting, inviting people to the public forums that we're staging every quarter for Anchored Home. I know there's been discussion about utilizing the HAND Commission in a different way, but we will continue to engage the public in every capacity we have and continue to remind people of these avenues as well.
Quick question.
Sure. Ms. LaFrance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question about the coordinated entry system and it being reworked, and I think, Nancy, you said taken to the next level. Does that involve more points of entry, or what does that mean exactly?
Yes, and essentially we stood up a coordinated entry system in 2017, and Anchorage, like many other communities in the nation, took the HUD prescribed restrictions and guidance very literally, and so we've created a system that works for a small subcategory of people, but in many ways the system has lots of room for improvement, and the pace is not something that the provider community is happy with, that the public community is happy with. People can sit on the coordinated entry list for a long time. So from my fresh perspective, it is an inflow and an outflow problem. So we do need a better and more robust way to help people gain access to these resources. But we also need to make sure that all the resources available in the community that match need are accepting referrals from the coordinated entry system. And until inflow and outflow is working effectively, the list is just a list. So again, Anchorage isn't unique. This is how most communities in the nation have rolled this out. But there's a couple of communities who have done coordinated entry in a radically different way, and it has proven to be very effective, from everything to coordinated shelter intakes all the way through helping people moving out of permanent supportive housing into mainstream apartments. So we see great outcomes from the 3 or 4 communities that have done something differently. But there was public will, there was funding, and so we need to see what we can do in Anchorage based on the resources available in Anchorage. We're launching a survey. We're hoping to have it out by the end of January, that essentially talks to everyone who is an access point, everyone who works with these clients, and everyone that takes referrals, to ask the questions about what's working and what's not. And then the goal is, as we engage in Built for Zero, which Nancy briefly mentioned, we have this national support on how to make a better list, how to better understand the needs of our community. So that has to be tied in with the redevelopment of coordinated entry. To get that brain trust in our community, we should be doing it. Does that help?
It does, thanks.
Here are the list of priorities that have been identified through the plan process, and we'll have a slide coming up next on how we came up with these, but this may be a good time for us to pause and have the update on priority number 1 is to improve community health, safety, and emergency systems by increasing available temporary shelter beds and working on camps. And Natasha Benita, the director of the health department, is with us and has been quite involved in working on the temporary shelter resources.
Great. Thank you.
Hey guys, I'm just a figurehead. Steve Ashman actually has all the knowledge, so I'm going to tell you the information, but if there's any nuanced technical questions, we'll have to call on him to answer it. But I have been working pretty closely hands-on on this year's project. Just to set the stage, we wanted to remind you what we did in the 2017-2018 winter. Securitas operated emergency cold weather shelter at the Beans Cafe location from November through April. The cost for that service was $43,000 per month plus $8,000 rent to Beans Cafe. The maximum capacity at that operation with Securitas running it was that in January we exceeded 75 people 6 times. In February of that year we exceeded 75 4 times, but we never reached 100. Our average capacity was more in the range of 55 to 65, and in some cases lower. So for the 2018-2019 winter season, we had originally planned to, I think we talked about this before, at some point, Securitas was going to operate that in the excess of the safety center based on the numbers from the previous year, but then there was a change in capacity at that location. And so we, the partners down on the campus, Brother Francis and Beans coordinated. Brother Francis really coordinated very closely with our staff to make sure that those people, when they were exceeding it, were able to get to that location for safe harbor, basically. And in the meantime, we were working on an invitation to bid to get a full-time contractor to provide that service for up to 85. We had used 85 as our number based on previous years. We put out an invitation to bid. One bid was received. It was non-responsive. They didn't have enough space or a location that could provide the service to everyone. And then there was lots of different ideas about splitting them in the location, and that work is kind of challenging for the population and for the service providers. We ultimately entered into an agreement directly with Beans Cafe to house up to 100 clients, which was the capacity for mats on the ground in that location. However, we've quickly seen that the client level is much higher than experienced in preceding years. We are paying, the cost is around approximately $60,000 per month, and that includes one evening meal in their pricing, but they have been at 100% capacity with regularity, and so has Brother Francis. And in fact, during the cold snap, it became a crisis for quite a few people because we could not house everyone in those locations that needed cold weather. So Beans, Brother Francis, our team, the mayor's office, the many departments got involved in coming up with what is now called the emergency warning station to address the need for the exceeded number of individuals that need cold weather sheltering. So this is now basically the emergency backup to the emergency cold weather sheltering contract. And we partnered with Jamie Acton in Transit, Easy Park. So we have health and safety of homeless individuals is the goal. It is activated when the Anchorage Health Department identifies the outside ambient temperature is going to be 10 degrees or below. We have to provide at least 24 hours notice of activation. The hours of operations for such a service would be between 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. We will have Securitas provide security staffing because they have been trained to work at the safety center, and they're already familiar with that population as opposed to working with a security company that may not be sensitive to the needs of that population. So that costs us $27 per hour times 2 security guards, and it is over an 8-hour period, so approximately $430 per shift. The warming station that we activated during the last cold snap was at the transit center, and how the transit routed folks, we were able to give them free rides and with referrals from Beans to that warming station, so we were able to provide them with that transportation. So it was a great partnership with our other departments, and we activated that service on January 9th, and we had looks like 25-70, 25 people.
25 people, 7 of which left after within a half hour.
Perfect. So then when we activated on the 10th, we had 42 people with 5 people that left, and on the 11th, we had 51 people and 11 people that left. So that means all the shelters were at capacity. Emergency cold weather shelter was at capacity, and then on the very cold, over the coldest nights, we got to 51 people in addition to that. What we can't tell you is unduplicated. So we don't know we're working on that. That's something that at a bigger level of collaboration is saying, like, you know, of the 11 people that left, did they end up back at Beans, and did Beans have somebody leave that created space for that 11 person? So we can't tell you with exact precise that we know the exact number of people, but we have a good sense that there's somewhere between 20 and 40 folks who we did not have anticipated shelter for. So that is the update on that.
If I could, I have some questions.
Oh,
yeah, thank you. Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have another program that's part of this, I know, that works with the faith community, right? And particularly churches to provide this same kind of cold weather shelter. So can you give an update on that, of how many churches are participating, and are there more or less people being sheltered during this cold snap at the faith community this year than there were last year?
Steve might be able to do that update, but I do want to say, when we were exercising the ideas around the cold warmer, what we should do about this excess of people, the churches came to the table and we're trying to offer locations, and we're very engaged in trying to help stand up other voluntary locations, in addition to the fact that they're, I believe, at large capacity.
Yeah, we've surveyed and talked to all of these shelters, and all of the shelters, as you mentioned, are at capacity, including the Gospel Mission over on Twitter. The faith-based organizations, every night they have at least one church that is available. They have been in the above 15, and they might have hit 20 one time, but they're at 17, 19 at capacity, about at capacity each night.
So the entire, you're saying that the faith community, or the churches, the combined churches, of which there are dozens, if not hundreds in Anchorage, house 15 to 20 people per night?
We have 8 churches that are signed up for participate in the emergency cold weather shelter program, and the maximum capacity they can have is 20. Each share a night. They've not exceeded
Each church.
Each church shares a night, so it's
okay.
nights. Each night we have a place for
There's one church operating
families
per day.
Okay.
Michelle, I know Michelle Brown also, coordinates and helps resource that. And the capacities are set by the fire marshal. Those are rules that are set in place by.
Yeah, the issue is not that individual church could have more than 15 or 20. It just surprises me that at any given night in Anchorage, there's only one church. Given that we have dozens, if not hundreds, of tax-exempt buildings, that this seems to be like one of their core functions, and it's been sort of surprising and frustrating to me that more aren't open. We have 8 participating, that more aren't open to shelter folks.
However, they have met demand. They have met demand. I don't want to discount the value that they bring into this. I mean,
the value of those that are participating is tremendous.
Dead nights last year and the year before, so they're substantial.
Absolutely, but I guess I would challenge the notion that they are. If we have to do another emergency, we have to open another emergency shelter, then I don't think the argument can be made that the system we had set up last year was adequate this year.
And I might also point out that one of the things, because we had a conversation with the church, I mean, we had excess demand. We weren't able, unfortunately, Beans and Brother Francis Shelter, and working with the fire department, we were able to move things around and go over their capacity for 2 days until we were able to activate the warming station. But the clientele at the churches are entirely different from the clientele that we see at the shelters. And the church volunteers aren't properly trained and aren't expected to be trained to provide assistance to that clientele.
So you're saying that it's more, there are many other churches that might be willing to do this, but we don't have the capacity to sort of get them to a point where we're comfortable housing folks there.
Yes.
Okay.
And definitely during the cold weather snap, trying to come up with solutions. I know that there was other churches that came forward and were willing to give the space, but not necessarily to come with volunteers to man it. The Archdiocese was willing to make their space available. They were looking at things, so partners were reaching out to everyone, and even those that are only focused on sheltering families, they were willing to take individuals from the shelters, and were coordinating with the shelters to take those folks if they had the capacity. So if they had 4 spots that weren't being taken by a family, they were coordinating with the shelters to take them in. So at the capacity we were operating, everybody was all hands on deck and engaged in trying to figure out the right solution. So now we definitely have a way to turn something on quicker. There's protocols, I believe, they can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the providers have gotten to work with us on those protocols. Everybody understands which weather company we're looking at to make the call. We have a very clear trigger when we let the chief of staff know that we, in 10 days we anticipate needing cold weather shelter so that she can activate a location. So that is the good thing that came out of all of that is really a strong protocol that's in place that we all know how to use now, and we should be able to turn on more easily.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And if I could just comment really quickly, I definitely commend the administration and the different organizations that came forward to bring forward the emergency warming station. I think it's fantastic, the quick turnaround that you had. I do want to second a notion that Mr. Dunbar made, though, and that perhaps we should move forward in an exercise in building capacity. I think that might be worthwhile within our churches. Okay.
I think maybe we'd like to respond a little bit to that.
Sure.
I think the consideration is, to work through the protocol that we did in a short number of days, probably involved 15 municipal employees, full days, over a 3 to 5 day period. And while we are a big organization to move, we're thin in staff and the capacity to administer and coordinate, and we still don't have it all covered. We're asking, our partners to help figure out the movement of people, and there is an administrative component to this work that needs to be also, kind of brought up and considered.
So I know that the Lisas had wanted to speak specifically around cold weather shelter. Would this be appropriate time?
Yeah, and then if you want, I can do an update on the displaced earthquake persons.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll go to Lisa's and then we'll go to the earthquake.
Sure. Well, thank you again, Natasha, Steve, Nancy, everybody for listening to our concerns when the cold weather was forecasted, and we were seeing unmanageable numbers of people at the shelter and people being turned away. The one thing I do want to point out to the ad hoc committee is that we have 2 different standards in this community for people who are seeking shelter. If you are a family, the temperature for the churches to be activated is 40 degrees. If you are a single adult, the temperature is 10 degrees. And I want to make sure that, in our role, I view a lot of what we do as being a voice for people who don't necessarily have a voice. And I want to make sure the Assembly really understands, are you comfortable with shelters not having capacity and people literally having nowhere to go until it's 10 degrees? Because that's where we sit today. And the Muni, they've done an incredible job mobilizing, but that is the number that they've set. I want to make sure that the committee is aware of that and the community is aware of that, and that we're comfortable with that. I personally am not.
I need to just make a correction. The emergency cold weather shelter ordinance triggers at 40 degrees, and that allows us to have a contract with Beans Cafe. So we are operating on all systems at the same temperature. The fact is there's more people in the adult system, and when it comes to 10 degrees, we've added an extra layer of resource in this process, and that is the challenge that we all have, that we suspect there are more people now even than the extra layer to the overflow emergency cold weather shelter. So sorry, but I do want that corrected. All of the system triggers at 40 degrees, and that allows us to use extra buildings, such as Beans Cafe, Downtown Hope Center. I would also put like a little placeholder for the committee that the authorizing ordinance for emergency cold weather shelter for adults to use those extra buildings is up in this summer, 2019. So it could be a good time to look back on that.
And then I just add one thing, because it is
Sure.
true, the cases
Yeah,
that they've exceeded we accounted for 100 spots, which was 15 or 25 more than we had used last year. And now we're exceeding that. I don't think we all have an exact number, but we're exceeding that when it's between 11 degrees and 40 degrees, we're exceeding that by 20 to 40 people. So there are 20 to 40 people who may be going back to camp, finding other locations, maybe bunking up with somebody that they know that does have shelter. So it is the case that we have more people this year than we have resources for.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sure, very brief.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think that's the point that we wanted to try to make really clear, is that like a lot of the triggers that we created are about temperature, and I absolutely
Yes, so just to say that the need's out there, and we just want to make sure we appreciate all the work that's being done. The people that we serve, I know, appreciate it. And just to say there's more need for shelter beds. And it says temporary underneath, that's underlined right there. And I hope that it's temporary, but just to say there's clearly a need for more beds, and I don't know if it's temporary. I hope, but I don't know.
Yeah, and I want to again thank I know the community worked incredibly hard. Everybody did to pull this together. I just want us all to be aware that we are still seeing people being turned away nightly from shelter.
Thank you for that update. All right, so I have a couple of questions, and we'll get on to the earthquake. Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you. Two quick questions. One, have there been cold weather fatalities that we know about? And two, the statistics we put out a couple months ago said there have been 18% reduction in chronic homelessness, at least between the 2 point in time counts. So how do you square that reduction with the fact that we appear to have more people in need of cold weather or emergency shelter this winter?
The information, we have one data point in the community that we work to improve, and that is the point in time count. And just a plug for that, it's coming up on the 22nd. And I think that's going to be very telling. I'm very excited for the count this year. We're ensuring that we have enough volunteers to do a very robust count, because the information that's coming to us from the outreach teams and workers is that people have moved from where we would traditionally see camping. The earthquake flooded some of the areas. People are moving to different areas, and we suspect some of them are coming in for shelter who didn't come in. We've heard that the earthquake was frightening and that trees were falling, and so people are seeking shelter, I believe, this year more so than in last. But I will put a little footnote there for us to come back to after we can even give you some preliminary numbers after the point in time, understanding that this is just a part of it, and so that we can continue to have this conversation. And then just to make sure, the 18% reduction was the number of people that we physically counted unsheltered outdoors from 2017 to 2018. So we were seeing this movement of people, and we also saw in that chart that the shelter usage went up over those years. So the system is moving forward. We don't know if these are new people coming into the system, or if these are people that are, the system is moving forward towards shelter.
And have there been any cold weather fatalities?
There are always cold weather fatalities. I can ask for the update. I have the update through December of 2018. It's in I'll double check, but I believe it's in the community presentation, and I will send that out to the committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Mr. Dyson.
Yeah, thank you. Thinking about points that Mr. Dunbar raised. It's somebody back here, so I spoke right knowingly. When we're going to send people to churches or other of the non-institutional sources, most individuals and churches are not equipped to handle the most, what's the right term, high-risk people. So, having folks who have the first aid skills, are able to deal with violent and angry people is not something that a church generally can count on having available at the right times. My family has taken in quite a few homeless people, as have all my daughters, and so on. Several of those don't have storybook endings, and there's, some significant risk issues. But I heard the inference here that you all try to do a little sort on the people you refer to the local churches. I see some knowledgeable people.
Families go to churches right now, so we automatically, any families that come to Beans, we immediately connect them with different resources.
Yeah.
Because we're really focused on more individuals and single adults.
But in the past, when we partnered with churches in the winter to help with single adults, we try to sort of, it's people select, they want to choose it, but we make sure that it's understood what the rules are, just like it's sober, for instance. So Brother Francis Shelter, it's low barrier, and you don't have to be sober to come in, but the church is sober, and there's other kinds of things that we look at just to make sure that what you're talking about is.
And I just, if you all want to a great experience of show and tell. Go ride with the Community Service Patrol and see the people they're picking up in the middle of the night. And for the layperson, it's fairly difficult to tell whether somebody's drunk or in a diabetic coma or a drug-induced one, you know, and in danger as aspirating their own vomit and all those kind of things. And so it's wonderful to have an elastic overflow capacity, but somebody's got to do a sort on those. And yeah, sorry. One more thing. In one of these meetings a few months ago, somebody that's part of the solution here said, "Oh yeah, and we have, what is it? Voluntary, season-related, voluntary incarcerations." That means that people, when it gets really cold, perpetrate a minor crime in order to get a warm place to bunk for a few days or a few months. Have we?
Diddle hopper effect.
Pardon?
Oh, excuse me.
Friends of yours too?
I call that the Cadiddle hopper effect, if you remember Ritz Gilton.
Yeah. So, anyways,
I don't know any of those things.
we see still some of that.
I'm going to maybe lump that question. The answer is we don't know. There's no way to know who would have tried to commit a crime previously, and now there's been some changes you might have heard about in criminal justice reform, and whether that's possible even anymore. You know, that could also be another contributing factor. But what we really need to get to is this supply equals demand, and the sort you're talking about is a meaningful by name list that tells us who can use minimal amounts of supports to be safe, who needs maximal amounts of supports to be safe, and how many. And as frustrating as it's been for the committee and the community and all of us, we're really now just approaching the sophistication in our data systems, in coordination of our services to work on that number this year. That's what the Built for Zero, that is literally, you highlighted nicely all of the factors that will go into that work.
Thank you, and I apologize for derailing the conversation.
No, it was great. It was for me.
Thank you, Mr. Dyson. I just want to note for the record that we have been joined by Ms. Wimhoff.
Thank you.
All right. To Earthquake.
Sure, I'll do a quick brief, but I guess I'll end on, you know, as we and our teams move towards planning for next fall, because we're charged with emergency cold weather shelter. It's just a game changer because we're moving to, you know, an N of 150 in our minds with a very limited amount of resource, and I just want to keep that on your radar as we move forward. Earthquake update is, I'm just going to give you guys some high-level numbers. Our team is still working with the state. Originally, when the earthquake operations at the city wound down, the earthquake operations at the state wound up, and they had a call made that emergency assistance line, and a lot of people called into that, and the result of that has been that we have in Anchorage currently 53 households that are currently being housed in hotels, and with a total population of 156 persons. I was a little late because we were actually meeting with some state folks talking about this. There is a number, but I don't have it, of people who are utilizing that service who were precariously housed prior to the earthquake or were homeless prior to the earthquake and were able to take advantage of the emergency assistance, which consists of 30 days of hotel stay. The state made a request to get that extended to 30 more days, so really they got 60 days of hotel housing. Most families that were previously housed will qualify for longer housing support services, as you've probably heard in other presentations. There's a small group of people who will not meet that threshold because they were already previously homeless. And we don't have the, we don't have the number for that, but we are working now pretty closely in concert with the city manager, Jody Hetrick, Chief Hetrick, myself, to figure out what is the need going to be once the previously homeless or precariously housed that will not be able to move back into housing. So some of those precariously housed, I believe that definition, it may have been substandard renting locations already, but they've been all evicted because the landlord's type of service. There's a bunch of nuances in how they
identify it. So this might be, as we talk with the state and figure out what aftercare support can the city provide to the citizens of Anchorage and what services have to be coordinated by the state. There'll be further conversations, and it may be a different committee or a different environment that you want to break that down. But know that a lot, I've gone through I have access, they've given us access to the smart sheet, and a lot of the folks that need assistance have pre-existing behavioral health issues, pre-existing disability issues. Some may or may not be on waivers or have support services already, and the state is better positioned to provide coordination of those services. Some of the interesting things we're running into is in a state that has a normal county system, a lot of those services are actually conducted by the local health department. So your disability services, your mental health services, all of those things are coordinated through a local health department, so we would be the right organization to do case management for that. But the way our local health department and state are set up, the state coordinates a lot of those services. So we're still working out what that handoff looks like and what parts of the service care are we going to do to make sure that all the citizens who were impacted by that earthquake are supported. So we don't exactly know, but there are some of those 150 people are previously homeless and are not actually in our count yet, which is something we should be aware of. I'm working to get that number. I've been told it's fairly small, but I'd like to know. So I'll be able to provide that in the near future.
Thank you. All right. Don't see any questions. Then Ms. Brick stepped out. I think we went over everything on the point in time. And just to do a pitch for any community members in the audience who are interested, I believe they're still looking for a few more volunteers. The last update I got was a couple days ago. They were looking for 25 volunteers. I don't know what the number is now. So the contact information